My very first video on this channel talks about the first strange metaphysical experience I had, which was when I was in labor for 3 days with my son. And you should go back and listen to that at some point because I think it's interesting. It was my metaphysical awakening, so that's meaningful. Um, that happened in 2017. And then this conversation that I'm going to talk about happened in 2019. I think it was only a few months before the pandemic. I was out to lunch with one of my best friends who is a Jehovah's Witness. That's her religion. And it's not really something we were coworkers. We started out as coworkers together many years ago, and we became great friends. And we don't really talk about faith and religion and things like that. We're more centered on art and design because that's what we do. And we have a lot of the same interest in, just for whatever reason, we've never really talked about faith, religion, metaphysics, anything. We don't talk about the woo, or at least we didn't. And then in 2019, we were having lunch, and I hadn't seen her in a while because I had a small child. And I was telling her about my labor experience. So again, just to briefly recap, I had a kind of out of body experience when I was in labor, and I talked to someone who looked like a Viking on top of a mountain. It's very odd. And he gave me a pep talk to get me through the experience. And I was telling my friend about this, and she knew that I had been raised in the Catholic Church, and I left the church when I was young. And we had both gone through crises of faith. At one point she was kicked out of her church, and I left my church, which in a Catholic family, not really something you do. So I was a bit ostracized in a way as well. And so these are things we had bonded over and talked about. And so we had both had crises of faith, but she went back to her faith and I didn't. Which is not to say that I was an atheist. I was a very solid agnostic. I didn't know, didn't want to say I know. I hadn't had any experiences, but I'm an artist and I understand creation and the creative process. And I just look around the world and I'm like, I don't see how all of this could come up from nothing without a creative aspect behind it. So that was sort of my worldview at that point in time. Jump to fall 2019, we were having a conversation. I was telling her about my metaphysical experience while giving birth. And I told her I was just sort of like, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I kept thinking about it, and I had started meditating, trying to sort of I had never really meditated before. And I was trying to figure out what had happened to me, because I knew it was very real. And she said something to me, which, I was 34 at this point in time. I think. I was around there. I'm not going to do the math in this moment. And she is older than me. And she said, well, have you ever tried, just saying out loud, is there a God? Is there anyone else here that I can't see or feel or interact with? She's basically saying, have you ever asked the universe, is there more there? And if so, will you give me a sign that I cannot misinterpret? And I was like, no, I had never said anything like that out loud. I was Catholic. I was taught the prayers that you memorize and that you say at night, but I never felt them, I guess you could say. It just felt like I was doing what someone told me to do, because that's what I was doing. And so I had never said those words out loud or asked, because it felt silly. And so on my drive home, I was by myself, and I just did that. I did what she said. I asked out loud, is there anything else here? Anyone else here? Is there something more? And I got home. Full disclosure, I live in a very old farmhouse in the middle of the woods. So we have critters that come in, often. But we have normal woodland critters, like squirrels and birds, you know? I got home and my husband and son were like frantic in the kitchen because there was an animal under the cabinet. He said, I just saw this white thing dash under the cabinet. I couldn't even tell what it was. And so I got on my hands and my knees and I looked underneath the cabinet, and it was what it was a baby weasel, but it was a white weasel. But they're called ermines. They are native to the area we live in. We live up north. So it's not unheard of to see a completely white weasel. But I've lived here a very long time, and I've never in my life seen a white weasel, let alone a baby, let alone in my house, let alone within 10 minutes of asking the universe if to give me a sign that there is something more, something else, something more than just what we can absorb with our five senses. And the other thing about that is that we didn't actually catch the little weasel and put it outside. I saw it under the cabinet, and I told them what it was, and it looked at me, and then it went behind a little like nook, and we just never saw it again. I'm assuming it found its own way out, but we never saw it again. So that's also a rare thing. Every other time we've ever had a wild animal in the house, we've had to catch it and put it back outside. And this one just disappeared as quickly as it showed up. So that's the whole story, but that's notable, I feel. Anyhow, I'll link the birth out of body type experience that I had. It's the very first video ever posted on this channel. I might go back and re-record it at some point, because every time I listen to it, I keep thinking like I need to fix this. But for now, it's that's what's there. Yeah.